Hello everybody. Hopefully today's a great Friday for everybody. I'm downstairs working on math, solving all the math problems of the world. So hopefully you have your journals out and you're ready to learn. Hopefully you're being quiet and attentive because I have something important to go through. So we are on page 120. Page 120 of your journals. So go to page 120 of your journals and we're going to take a look at it, okay? So we're still trying to find zeros. Okay, zeros. Now what are zeros? Zeros are the same thing as x-intercepts. We learned that yesterday. Alright? So there's a couple of ways to do it. One, we can do it by graphing, and graphing is not a bad way to do it, but for me, really graphing is kind of a pain. So if we take a look on page 120, exploration, let's look at A. We do know how to graph this. Okay, we can go down to -4, 1, 2, 3, 4. There's my vertex. And if we do our, squared numbers, 1, 1, 2, 4, 3, 9, we go 1, 1. We go back to the vertex, go over 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 3, 9 is up here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And of course we know the parabola is symmetrical. So we just draw the other part, which goes through the line of symmetry. So here's our parabola. What we're looking for, though, are the zeros. Okay, so the zeros are here and here. So we know the answer, or the x-intercepts, or the zeros, are at x equals -2 and x equals 2. Now, there's an easier way to do this. We could factor it and get the answer, or we could solve it and get the answer. That's what I want to teach today. Let's look at B. Okay, now B is going to start up at 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right, there's where my vertex is. And then we'll do our 1, and we'll do twice as much. 1, 2, 1, 2. And then we'll do our 4, 2, and we'll go 8, but it's way up here. Now, before I do a whole lot, I'm looking at it. Remember, I'm trying to find the zeros. And again, if the zeros are x-intercepts, if they are x-intercepts, there are none. So in this case, there are no solutions or no zeros. That's easy, okay? And again, I'm going to show you how to do this without graphing. So, all right, to me personally, doing it by graphing is kind of a pain. I would much rather do it algebraically. Just solve it. So let's flip the page, a couple of pages. Let's flip all the way to page 123, okay? Let's go all the way to page 123 in our journal, okay? Page 123 in our journals. Okay, ready? Flip on over to page 123. Now, here on page 123, we've got these problems. We're going to do these without graphing because it's so much easier. We're just going to solve it. We're going to solve the equation. All right. Before we do anything, though, we remember that there are always going to be two answers. Always going to be two answers. Sometimes the two answers have to be the same number twice, but there's always going to be two answers. Or there's a possibility of no solutions. Okay, so no solutions would we have something like this one here where it's just not going to cross. But how do we know that? Well, here's what we're going to find out. Okay, so I'll stop for a minute. Two answers, no solutions. What happens here? If you get the square root of a negative number, it's impossible. You cannot take the square root of a negative number. In fact, if you try it on your calculator, let me show you real quickly. If I were to take the square root of a negative number on my calculator, square root of, say, -4, it says non-real, okay? So anytime we get any kind of square root of a negative number, we can't do it. Cannot take the square root of a negative number. So if that happens, we know that there's no solution, and it's going to look something like this. Even though we don't want to graph it, graphing it would be kind of a long way to do it. We know when we solve these, we get the square root of a negative number, there's no solution. So first of all, let's do number 2 before we do number 1. Okay, so number 2, I'm just going to solve it. Two ways. I could either factor it, and that seems like the easiest way to do it here. I'm just going to factor it. X and x plus 5 minus 5, right? We know how to factor that. X plus 5 minus 5. We have our mini equations. We've got x plus 5 equals 0, and we got a mini equation x minus 5 equals 0. If we solve, right, one answer is negative 5, and the other answer is positive 5. So these are my x-intercepts. These are my answers. X equals negative 5 and x equals positive 5. I got two answers. Easiest way to do it was by factoring, okay? Now, let's take a look at number 3. Okay, I'm going to come back to 1. Let's take a look at number 3. So in number 3, it doesn't factor, but I can solve it. Okay, I can solve it. So in number 3, I'm going to go minus 6, all right? X squared equals 0. Now to undo an x squared, we always do the opposite. The opposite of x squared is to square root. Okay, square root. Because the square root is the opposite operation of a square. They cancel each other out, you're just left with x. I'll say it again. To get rid of a squared term, you take the square root because they're an opposite operation, and they just cancel each other out. So I get the square root of 0, which is 0. We could say that there's two answers, but 0 happens twice. So we'll just say x equals 0. Yes, there are two answers, but it happens twice in the same spot. Okay, now let's shift back to question number 1. Okay, in question number 1, it will not factor. It really won't, because positive 7, negative 7 won't make 49. Not positive 49, but let's solve it. So if I go x squared, I'm on a minus 49, right? If I go minus 49, just solve it. I'll get x squared equals negative 49. To get rid of the square from x squared, we're going to square root it. Okay, here's our problem. If you have a negative, you can't have a negative square root, okay? So we're going to say there are no solutions. Not only that, but if I think about this graph, it's a parabola that starts way up at 49 and goes up. It's never going to cross the x-axis. I mean, think about that, right? It starts at 49, goes up, it'll never cross. Okay, let's keep going. Let's do some of these. Now, let's take a look at, say, how about number 5? Let's solve number 5, okay? So number 5, I'm going to solve it. I'm going to go, okay, let's go plus 72, plus 72. So I'm just going to solve these. 2x squared equals 72. I'm going to divide by 2 first before I do anything else. Divide by 2. I'll have an x squared equals 36. Now, two answers. So I'm going to square root and square root, okay? Now, we're going to get two answers. One is going to be x equals 6 because 6 times 6 is 36. The other answer is x equals negative 6. Yeah, negative, because negative 6 times negative 6 is also positive 36, because a negative times a negative is positive. So we get 6 and negative 6 as the answers. Okay? All right, let's look at maybe, I want to scoot all the way down to 14. All right, let's scoot all the way down to 14. Okay, 14 is different. All right, 14. Now remember, we're going to have two answers, okay? We're going to have two answers. 14 is different. You see the parentheses squared? So I'm not going to subtract 2 yet. We're going to leave the 2 there. We can't do anything with the 2 yet until we get rid of the parentheses. Got to get rid of the parentheses. To get rid of the parentheses, we're going to undo the square. So we're going to square root both sides. Now, what's the square root of 196? Should be 14. We can double check. Square root of 196. We just do it on a calculator. If you're not sure, I can go, okay, square root, on the calculator, square root 196. Should be 14, and sure enough, it is 14. So you get 14. So we get, so the square root cancels square, so I get an x plus 2 equals 14. But there's two answers, because a negative 14 times a negative 14 also makes 196. So there's two answers. The other is going to be the x plus 2 equals the negative 14. Two answers, you need the positive and the negative of it. So when you take a square root, remember there's two answers, a positive and a negative value. Okay, now let's finish this up. This is easy. Minus 2, minus 2. Oh, I get one answer is x equals 12. Okay, that is a true answer. The other is minus 2 minus 2x equals negative 16. That is the other answer. Okay, I want to do one more of those. Let's do 15. Okay, let's do one more of those so you guys get the hang of this. Okay. All right, let's slide this over to 15. Okay, so the first thing, don't subtract 7. It's inside the parentheses. So what we have to do is get rid of the parentheses. So I'm going to get rid of the square by doing the opposite of what the square is, and that is to square root. Okay, so the square will cancel the square root, and so what I'm left with is a 2x plus 7 equals, well, the square root of 49 is 7, but we need two answers. We need two answers. I know that we need a 7, and square root of 49 is also negative 7, because negative 7 times negative 7 is also going to be 49. So I'm going to have this other little mini equation. I'm going to say, and I'm going to have a 2x plus 7 equals a negative 7. So you have to have both. You need two answers, 7 and negative 7. Okay, so let's solve. Okay, two little mini equations. First one's minus 7 minus 7. 2x equals 0, right? Minus 7 minus 7. Divide by 2, divide by 2. One answer is x equals 0. Okay, I like that. Second answer, minus 7 minus 7. I get a 2x equals negative 14. Divide by 2, divide by 2. X equals negative 7. Okay, so I end up with two answers, 0 and 7. All right, so if you can factor these, that might be the way to go. If you want to solve it, that might be the way to go. Do remember, though, that square roots and negatives have no solutions. Can't do those. And that you should always have two answers. Okay, that's all I have. You have a homework assignment on the computer, and you have your tessellations that are going to be due by the end of the period. Okay, so there we go.